6 months since we last spoke in this pub.
Yeah.
How has the 6 months been?
The weather's better, that's one thing, and the football season is a completely different landscape. I think last time I spoke to you we were in 12th, and we'd lost quite a lot of games, lost to Brentford, had those games against like teams that we should have been beating, the Sunderlands, and you know, too many draws really. We knew that it was a difficult start to the season, but I think also there were really obvious holes in our team back then, and look at the difference now. So I couldn't have imagined a better 6 months. Well, there hasn't been in the club's history, there's never been a better run of form than one loss in 24 games.
What do you think the key factors to that are?
I think I said to you when we last spoke that getting rid of Klein was really important. I think there was a lot of mistakes made in the summer transfer window, a lot of square pegs in round holes, permanent transfers as well, which I think weren't good fits, like Mollo. I thought he looked like a good player, but he just didn't get any time. There was quite a few new players, like AK-47, was he going to be up front? He was a completely different player from Font, and you know that would change the way we played completely. Then Tom Kearney being injured, that was a big thing. So if we think back to the start of the season, Slav was sort of saying, you know, he might leave if he wasn't given a bit more control over the transfers. You don't know what happened there, but you didn't necessarily think it was his squad. Whereas here today, the day before the first playoff, I feel like we're his team completely. But from January, we've just been wonderful, and it's been brilliant. We lost our last game of the championship. I know a lot of people were deflated. Actually, I didn't really have the expectation, and I know Cardiff won on that day, and there's a lot of ways of looking at it. One of my friends said, oh, you know, we've choked, and we've, you know, the first sign of pressure, and we've cracked. And I said, we've lost one game in 24. How have Cardiff been able to cope with that? And at one point we were so far behind, and to come within, you know, a couple of points of meeting it shouldn't have happened. That Cardiff were able to just. Obviously, Brentford scored against us in the last minute, and it was, you know, it was bad. But actually, the thing that really sickened me on that day was when Cardiff scored in the 89th minute and then scored again in after the 90th against Norwich away, and that told me that they had the mentality to bring it in. So, as to us losing, sport is never black and white. Well, even if you're a Fulham fan, it's not always black and white. Sometimes you play away, you're in yellow. And I just think for the players to go to St Andrews, where they were obviously going to be under loads of pressure from the fan. You know, it's not an easy place to go to at the best of times. But Birmingham needed a win, and we could have died on that pitch, and Cardiff would have scored in the 89th minute, and you know, we still, unfortunately, it wasn't in our own hands. So hopefully, my consoling thought is that they had their mind on the playoffs, and they had their mind on what they could control. I always think with Slav that he is pretty consistent. I think he does all the right things, and it's then about how other people invest in his ideas. So, did he really ever want Font? I'm not really sure, but obviously he was the man they had, and he had to play him. I think when I spoke to you, I said it was then up to the chairman and the people behind closed doors to just really invest in him and give him that faith, give him a little bit of extra just to get that team where it was at. And coaching wise, I think what you've seen him do at Watford and when he was in Israel, I think he's always been a good coach of players. He's always played attractive football and been able to get the results. So it's just been about getting everything else right. And I think he's proved what a good manager he is.
Is there a game that you've really enjoyed this season? Would you say your standout game?
Yeah, I think the standout game for me, the first half of the season, I think I spoke to you about Preston, where we showed that fight to come back and score in the last minute. Middlesbrough away and with a penalty, and with our thing for penalties the last couple of seasons, it's just, it was something that we needed to get over the line. Really has defined how we've pushed on is the Aston Villa game. And I think even if you watch that game, it was quite a tussle. First half, it was really even Stevens. And then Sessegnon on the turn, with no real angle, no real reason why he should have done, scored an amazing goal. And then Aite's lob, when the goalkeeper fluffed his lines and he lobbed from, what was it, 40 yards. But I think that was the game. Obviously we gave John Terry the Craven Cottage welcome that he deserved. But it was some of the passing in the second half and some of the dominance just started. The players really started to believe a little bit. And I think where it culminated was against Sheffield United, where we absolutely slaughtered them. And we started cheering their passes when they had the ball in the last sort of 15-20 minutes, because they just couldn't. We said, we're Fulham and you can't have our ball. It was amazing.
So going on to your player of the season, who would be your contenders, and then who would be your player of the season, would you say?
Obviously Ryan Sessegnon's been voted as the best player, best young player. He got all those 5 awards.
Paul, if you would like to tell us the winner of London's Young Player of the Year.
And the Young Player of the Year, sponsored by Zeus Capital, is Ryan Sessegnon.
I'm delighted to announce the winner this year for EFL Player of the Year is Ryan Sessegnon.
He's been obviously he's a standout player, and his future is just like nothing that we've seen from a child, an up-and-coming player. Really difficult as well explaining to people who have seen highlights of Ryan Sessegnon what sort of a player he is, because from watching Channel 5 or watching his highlight goals, like his goals against Sheffield United away, where he scored the hat-trick, you would have thought he was like Gareth Bale, Cristiano Ronaldo, where he just appears at the moments, has his extreme athleticism and just blazes past players. But actually one of the things that I'd say about him is his subtlety and his footballing brain. And he just doesn't make a bad decision. He's not the sort of player necessarily to beat sort of 4 or 5 players. Although I think that's a part of his game that will come on. And I think there was a run against Brentford he did where he had no right to get past the player, and it was a really beautiful dribble. But actually, what's been really wonderful is that he's played according to Fulham's strengths, which is more pass and move, and it's not about necessarily bombing forward all the time. It's starting deep and running past the last defender. He is happy to come short, pass it, and his patience, his decision making. I wouldn't say he's my player of the season though. Because you've got to look over the whole season and you've got to look at the impact on the team and the days when it hasn't been going well for you. He's like the cherry on top for me, and his performances have been, the shining light for Fulham's season, but they're not the bedrock. The other names you put are Tom Kearney. But he missed too much of the season. Some of his passing, I watched a video montage of I can't remember the game, but this passing show that he put on, and it was dirty, it was absolutely disgusting. Some of the passes he made and the intelligence that he showed, and just that ability to unlock the defence. I'd say he's been our best player over the last 2 or 3 seasons. Has he been there for long enough? Because I think we were getting a little bit frustrated coming into Christmas, thinking, is his mind sort of elsewhere? Is he thinking about? He almost went to Newcastle. He was spotted at Chelsea. You did worry though that maybe West Ham would come in for a transfer, and he's got Premiership quality, and he's a player who, at 27 he should be playing in the Premiership, and hopefully he still can with Fulham. So I'd say since he's come back, he has really spurned us on, but he hasn't been there for the whole season. So another name I'd mention is Kevin McDonald, and it's for the unsung stuff, all the things that you don't necessarily associate with the team. So being physical, being dogged, positionally being really good, freeing up players to be able to bomb forward. I'd say he's our one really indispensable player, is a strong house, and he's big, and he's the one who's going to win headers and protect the defence. And that is so important. You know, you've got to have the balance in the team, and he gives you that. And he's scored that goal against Millwall, which I could watch all day, every day. And there's something about Scottish players at Fulham. We've had a few the last few years, and it's really lovely to see him and Tom Kearney being the bedrock of the midfield. And I think the midfield is sort of like the Guardiola teams. I think that's what you'd say is the hallmark of our manager. You know, he plays from the midfield, and the defenders play more like extra wingers, and he tries to push them up as much as possible, sometimes dropping into a back three and getting those wingers up and compressing the front three. Very similar to Guardiola, we've got Mitrovic. And what I'd say about Mitrovic is there's been games where he's obviously banging in the goals for us. There's been goals he's scored that I haven't realised. If he's at the other end of the pitch, it's taken me until the roar of the crowd, because it just happens like that. And that's the other element that he gives to us. So my friend was saying that he watched a couple of games. He said Mitrovic sometimes seems like he's a little bit off the pace. He doesn't fit in with the sort of footballing style of the others. And I said, actually, that's exactly what we needed. Font was a player who could keep up with the play, keep the football going, but Fulham's biggest weakness is overplaying it, having all that possession but not having the sort of follow through. So with Mitrovic, I think he is that quality that against Sunderland, you know, how often do we just cross it in and get a header? It was just that moment that we didn't necessarily had to work really hard for, but we could just throw it into the mixer.
Coming to your player of the season now as?
I'd say it was Tim Ream. Most improved player. Most improved is difficult between him and Sessegnon. Obviously Sessegnon is 17. He's got his whole career ahead of him, and I remember watching him against Crystal Palace in pre-season last year and thinking I just didn't know enough about him, you know, at that age, and thinking he was very quick. But the player he is now, I got really close to him when the fans were doing their celebrations, applauding the fans, and I got to see how he held himself. That
was remarkable for me. He led
the team.
He led the celebrations at 17 years old
17.
Against Sunderland after the game.
It was with steel. It wasn't with. If you look at players who, when they were young, like Cristiano Ronaldo, who was pure ego and pure machismo and selfish, you know, he was all about himself. Ryan's never been that player. He wants to be a leader, he wants to lead by example, and he wants to be the mature person who makes mistakes, learns from them, doesn't have to be in the spotlight all the time, is willing to track back if need be. And it's really wonderful. Tim Ream, however, who I would still pick, has just been phenomenal, I think, over the course of the season. Think about that save against Millwall. That goal line clearance was just phenomenal. But it's more than that, it's just the assuredness, a bit like Kevin McDonald in midfield just in front of him. Just that confidence, knowing that if the ball comes to him, he's either going to clear it, or under pressure he's going to beat a man, do something spectacular. He's just been that ball-playing defender. I can't remember at Fulham, you know, he's been wonderful. And if you'd have said it even, you know, 8 months ago, if we'd have spoken then, he wouldn't have been the first name on the sheet. But for me, he is, you know, he's our one of our real leaders, and he is the rock that everything else has been grown on top of. Because there's games where we haven't necessarily dominated and we've had to be a little bit dogged, and he's been the man to take responsibility. We had Callas playing alongside him, who has dropped out. I kind of wonder for the playoffs. Dennis Doyle's come in, and I think he's played really well in freeing up, because he's such a quick player. He frees us up in an attacking sense, and we can really come out of our shells, because Callas doesn't have the speed. He'll drop back and will be allowed to be pressed a little bit, whereas Dennis will get to the ball and quickly release it so that we can get back into attacking. Looking into the playoffs, I think it was something that I would really consider just giving them a little swap and just letting Callas come in and looking at some of the teams we're up against. You know, it's not necessarily going to be that we have it all our own way, so I think we're going to need to show a bit of steel at sometimes, and I think Callas is someone who can give us that. I think what we need to do going into the playoffs is try something different, because I think everyone knows about what Fulham do at the moment. So we have to do something a little bit unexpected.
Would you play it like tight in the first half and then go for them second half?
Yeah, always. And I think that's been our way, and I think that is the thing that will work for us. I think we want them to come out and meet us first half, keep it tight. And that's been our formula since January. It's tight the first half. There's been times where it's like, oh, don't score in the first half, because then we won't destroy them in the second half. But get to half time and then see if you can get that goal that gives the team a bit more freedom. I don't know about the playoffs. I'm terrified. It is a complete lottery, and it is dependent on the day, and it is all about, well, it's about luck, and anything can happen, and very fine margins. I think we got in last season without anything left in the tank. You know, to pip Leeds with a couple of games to go, I think we looked exhausted. Whereas I think we've kept something back in the tank for the playoffs this time. I think it's a game that has to be managed. So I think I see that in Slav. He's like a fencer who will let people come in a little bit, find out what they're made of, or a boxer who will hold back at times, judge what the opposition can do, and learn as the match goes on, and then destroy. So I think that's that sort of cautious approach initially, and then reserving your fight to when it suits you, not when the other team bring it. So that's what I hope, is that we don't get the pace dictated, because when other teams dictate the pace and dictate that side of things, then we really struggle.
Gary Rowett is already cranking up the psychological pressure, saying it's strange why Stefan Johansson hasn't been banned for that elbow at Birmingham. Do you expect that kind of fight from them? Do you think they're just going to get in our faces?
I think they are, and I think that's the thing that Fulham have really struggled with. I think when teams come out and they press us and they try and stop us playing football, and they don't necessarily show that potent attack and then just try and counter, so they won't even leave a person up. They won't press us at all in the final third. They'll just let us do whatever we want and then break in numbers. I'd say Derby probably fit that kind of dogged, aggressive, not necessarily purist football style. So my big worry, particularly under Gary Rowett, is that they're not going to want to get it down and play, but they're just going to try and get in our faces, disrupt, play the dark arts, knock us at every opportunity, and try and disrupt our rhythm. One of my concerns, when I watch Channel 5, I think there is, and even BBC, there's been, the last few years I've noticed a real bias against Fulham. I'm going to sound a little bit like a conspiracy nut, but we've talked about it as Fulham fans, and we say, country-wise, we're not the most popular club because we're another London team, and the teams up north, their whole lives revolve around football, and I think there are Fulham fans who are that passionate, and I think there definitely are, but if you watch Channel 5, they won't always necessarily push Fulham as the team that they want to succeed. Colin Murray was saying that we'd get beaten at Millwall and there's no way we could keep our unbeaten run going. And the amount of time they show Fulham for, even on the BBC, I always wonder, we were playing such beautiful football, why are you giving us really short highlights? So part of me does worry about the strength of the referee and whether a couple of bad decisions will just, seep into the players' confidence, because we've had some really abysmal refereeing decisions over the last 4 years that we've been in the Championship. So they can turn a match, and I am concerned about the quality of the refereeing, because it is so important.
Barnaby, if we go to the second leg and it's a draw, would it concern you if we don't have someone like Cabana on the bench?
Yeah, quite a lot, to be honest. I think AK came on against Sunderland and he was a battering ram, he was full of energy. You could say Christie has had a little bit of that as well, and I think you do have to have those, you know, that plan B in place in case the first 11 aren't doing it. And to be fair, we've played the same squad for, you know, since January. Not many of them have had a rest. So for me, when Cabano's come on, he's really been a player to make a difference. His quick feet and, you know, his dribbling. I think he's the sort of player that could just make the difference. So if I was going to make one recommendation to the manager, I'd say someone like Cabano is more important than someone like Font, who I don't really know in this sort of two-legged playoff what purpose he would serve. But I'd really love to keep the manager. And actually, my friend, we were talking about end of legacies at other clubs, and Sir Alex has been in hospital, which has been, you know, a real, you know, it's been a real shock to the system. And Wenger leaving within the same fortnight. As a Fulham fan, it's a real shake-up. I was talking to my friend yesterday about it, and he said, "What do you think about Slav for the Arsenal job?" And I said, "Well, it would never happen." And then I thought about it and thought, that would be amazing for Arsenal. That would be the perfect fit, because he's a bit like Wenger in terms of his footballing style and philosophy. But he also has that stuff that Wenger's been criticised, all that steel and determination and that doggedness. He's like the dark reflection. I said he's like the black mirror of Wenger, and would he be able to crack it at Arsenal? Yeah, probably. He's a big character, and who knows where he could be destined for.
I was saying to you previously, I think it was the Barnsley game. After the game, I waited for him a couple of hours, and apparently he waits like 4 or 5 hours after a game to watch the 5:30 game, or afterwards to watch that. And I waited for him to give him a Christmas present. So I gave him a Christmas present and a card, and then I said to him, "Have you seen the Fan TV? You know, the Fan TV channel?" And he said, "I'm aware of what you do." I was like, "Okay." And then we said a few words, and he went on his way, you know, for his weekend, and I went on my way. And then 50 metres down the road, I thought to myself, does he mean that in a good way or a bad way?
Because it seems from the outside that with Slaviša you never know where you quite stand, and comparing him to someone like Mourinho, you never feel comfortable with him. He always keeps you on edge, and in that way that, you know, managers like Arsene Wenger, who's the players were accused of becoming really complacent, not responding to him, he always keeps his players fired up. And if I look at the team that Slaviša has moulded, they're a very fired up, very focused, very motivated squad. And I think he knows how to create that in them, and it's not always easy. But if I was talking to Slaviša, I'd say you've been amazing. I think there's been cultures within the new chairman's style that you've had to fight, and thank you for being strong enough to manage that. And when the transfer dealings haven't gone how you've wanted, you've challenged it in a sort of the right way without going so overboard that it becomes awkward, but also being aware about where you stand. So I think you've shown principles, and you've also shown your quality as a manager to mould this amazing team that has been phenomenal. And I really hope you stay with us in the Premiership and get us settled into sort of a mid-table team, which I think we're moving towards with just a few more signings and keeping the nucleus of players. And to Khan and the rest of the chairmen, just back the manager, back his ideas, and just let him do what he wants, because he will give you what you want, which is a successful, like the fans, a successful Fulham side. And then we'll start singing your name, just like we sing our favourites.